Hey, welcome back to another video. If we haven't met each other before, I'm Liz and I'm just here to candidly share my thoughts and my experiences on the road to the best version of myself. So in a lot of my videos, if you're new here, I like to unpack a variety of different challenges, adventures I've been going on in an attempt to explore myself, test my limits, and get to a new stage of development for myself. And in this little, I guess it's going to be a series, I'm going to be sort of unpacking my experience with running. Particularly, and what I'll be unpacking in this video is my experience of becoming a runner in my 30s. I was inspired to create this video by other content creators in this space, and I wanted to contribute to a growing voice around sort of atypical runners in the running space. For those of us who have not identified as someone who was a runner in a previous life and may not sort of fit the stereotypical mold of what a runner is supposed to be. So I wanted to make a contribution to that space as well. And I'm really grateful to so many of the content creators out there that are also speaking about this and inspiring people like me. A little bit of background about me. I think I'll probably go into a little bit more detail about my sort of history with physical activity in another video. But just to give you a little bit of a summary, I was never an active kid growing up whatsoever. I avoided sporting carnivals like the plague. I hated them. Cross-country competitions, like the longer running competitions at my school, they weren't even that big of a distance, but I hated them, avoided them. Running was awful. I did do some martial arts when I was in my teens, but again, avoided the cardiovascular aspects of that sport as well as much as possible. Throughout my 20s, kind of embarrassingly now when I think about it, I sort of made it almost a personality trait of hating cardiovascular activity, hating running. And I did sort of class myself as someone who is just not a runner. Some people are built for running, some people's bodies can do running, and mine can't. And I don't want to, and I don't like it. So that's been my history. And I think that's a big reason why I want to share this story, because I think so many people, sort of the bigger social media influencers on running, athletes that we see on TV, athletes that we know locally, most runners that we see even running past us, people don't often have that background. Most people that I know, or most people that you see whose videos we see on social media, are people that have been running, being physically active at least, their entire lives. They were very active kids who grew into very active teens and then were very active adults. And that just wasn't me. And so that's why I wanted to sort of share this story, to say things can change and it's okay to give yourself permission to shift gears even later in life. So I started off with strength training. I will link a little video that I created a little while ago about the amazing benefits that I did find from strength training. I do a lot of compound lifts, and I found that to be amazingly helpful for me in multiple ways, and as it turns out was a pretty fabulous base to be able to build in my body to prepare me for running as well, although that wasn't initially the intention. So yeah, wasn't physically active whatsoever. I was also quite unwell in my 20s. I was quite unwell physically, and as well as my mental health was in pretty bad shape. So all of those things were compounding and making it quite challenging to even conceive doing something like running. So that's sort of where I started. My first sort of proper go at running was about 5 years ago. I probably need to go back in the photos and find the exact date, but I think it was about 5 years ago. I still wasn't in a great place with my health at the time, but I had quite encouraging neighbours who'd encouraged me to come along to a local park run. So I went to the park run. If you're not familiar with park run, it's a 5K run every Saturday. And so they encouraged me to come along, and I went along to this park run. Now, I kind of had set myself up for a bit of a bad time, which I'll unpack in a little moment, but it's safe to say that was not a good experience. Not because of the environment, not because of the people there. The people were great, really encouraging. It's a really chill, encouraging, nice environment. And my neighbours were certainly very encouraging as well. But for me personally, I had a pretty terrible time with it. And after that experience, it was just physically very painful. I was exhausted. I was embarrassed because I could barely run. I walked most of it, and that's fine. Like, a lot of people walk at the park runs anyway, but for me personally, I just felt so defeated, and unfit, and just very low on myself, and swore basically that I would never run again at that point. Fast forward a couple of years, into the future. So looking at my timeline now, this is just over 2 years ago now. I had a bit more of a go with physical fitness at that point before I attempted running again. So what I did in between the failed park run to the park run I did 2 years ago that really got me started on the journey again, I started walking on a treadmill at night. I was going through a really stressful situation, and going for a walk on the treadmill at night at my local gym was a great stress reliever for me. So I'd pop the headphones in and just walk on the treadmill for an hour. And I did that a couple of times a week. And again, I purely did that as a stress reliever. I didn't do it to lose weight. I didn't do it to build me up to be a runner or anything like that. It was just a means to an end to sort of give me a sense of control and a sense of just some free headspace a couple of times a week. Over time, I started to get a little better with the treadmill walking, and slowly over time, I started to increase the incline because I felt like I could do a bit more of a challenge. And over time, I sort of increased the pace and increased the incline to the point where I could easily walk 5Ks. So that was the first difference between the run that I did later and the run that I did 5 years ago, is that I went basically from zero to trying to run a 5K. And that was obviously a huge mistake and added to that poor experience I had. But yeah, so at this point, I've been walking on a treadmill for a couple of months. I'd started my strength training as well. I was well on my way with my strength training as well, and was really enjoying the strength training side of things. And a friend invited another friend of mine to the local park run again. And I thought, it's been a couple of years. I have been walking a bit lately. I have been doing a bit more gym. Maybe I'll be in a better spot and I can give it another go. So with their strong encouragement, I gave park run another go. And that run went much better. It still wasn't fabulous, but in terms of my headspace, it was a lot better. I think another big difference between that time and the time the few years past is there was a lot of things that had changed in my life at that point. I'd gotten through quite a difficult situation. I was in a really unhealthy relationship, and I'd ended that relationship and found a renewed sense of peace, freedom. My mental health was starting to improve quite significantly at that point. So I was just starting to get in a better headspace. My headspace still wasn't great. My mental health still had a lot of work to do, and I was still going through a lot of challenge in my life at the time, but things were getting better. And I think, yeah, physically I was just in a slightly fitter place, and I do think that helped that experience a lot. So I probably walked and ran half and half that first park run. Then, feeling slightly motivated because I'd run a little bit more than I thought I could do, I decided to give it another go. So I think it was a week or two later, I gave the park run a go again, and I very slowly, but that actually did it, ran the full 5K. And that was an amazing achievement. I did feel like I couldn't believe that I could actually do it. I felt an amazing sense of success. But it still was very hard. It took it out of me. I was exhausted. I went home and I was basically collapsed on the couch for the rest of the day. It really took it out of me. It probably took a good day or two to recover from it, if I'm being completely honest. So although I was doing better than I thought, running was still feeling really, really hard. So that's kind of where I was. So now I'm just going to unpack a few things that were my concerns when I first started running, and how I've sort of shifted that concern and how I've resolved that concern over my last 2 years of running as someone who only started running in their 30s. So the first reason why a lot of people avoid running, as I did, for as long as I did, is because it really sucks when you start. It hurts when you start. And I think that's a really common thing. A lot of runners talk about that. Even runners who are experienced runners that have had a long break from running and then return to running, it's a very common thing to talk about that, yeah, it hurts. It hurts. It sucks. It's hard on the lungs. It's hard on the body. And when you haven't run basically your entire life and then you start in your 30s, yeah, it's going to really hurt. There's a lot of conditioning that your body needs to do that it's never done before. There's muscles in your body that you've probably never used before, and you're using your lungs to an extent that you've never used them before, and your heart as well. There's a lot of things going on, and it is quite hard on the body when you first start. Two things I've learned about that is that, first of all, it will pass. It will pass. It does get better. The second thing I've learned is something I sort of wish that I'd known a little earlier, but it is what it is. I was an amateur runner, still pretty much am anyway. And I realized, particularly that very first time 5 years ago when I attempted, and even the first few runs that I did at the beginning of my new running journey 2 years ago, is I was going too fast. Like, slow down, just slow down. If you're looking at your heart rate, like, do a bit of, if you're new to running, the one thing I would say is, and please go to an actual professional about this, but if I can share anything that I've learned about myself so far as a runner in my 30s, is use your heart rate as a guide of how hard you should be pushing yourself. Now, as part of like an actual running plan, yes, there are like interval sessions are really important. Pushing yourself is really important to get to a new, particularly an anaerobic level of fitness, to increase your anaerobic capacity. High interval training, working your heart and lungs really hard, is really important. However, what I've learned now is the majority of your runs, I think it's like 80% or more of your runs, should be quote unquote easy, which means you should be able to still talk while you're running. You should be able to breathe through your nose while you're running. If you're breathing, panting at your mouth for the majority of your runs, you're going too hard. And that's what I was doing. I thought in my mind, that's what running is. You have to just be absolutely flogging yourself. You have to be panting out of your mouth. It's not real running if you're not. And that's how you burn out. That's why it was taking me days to recover every single time I did that park run 5K. So slowing down, keeping your heart rate low is absolutely key. And it certainly was for me. It actually meant I went from running only 1 day a week to being able to run 2 to 3 times a week within a few months of me starting my running journey, because I finally learned I needed to slow down for the majority of my runs. And sometimes what that means is that you have to swallow your pride a little bit. Because what I sort of said to myself, there's a very handy video by someone who is actually qualified, Natasha OCN, who has a whole guide on starting running. So I'll link that video below. I found it really helpful. I hope you find it really helpful too. But she talks about, heart rate ranges that you should be aiming for. And the thing is, I'm pretty sure she articulates this in the video too, but it's certainly been my experience as well. If you find that you're going beyond your sort of easy heart rate range, jogging at all, like if you say to yourself, if I go any slower, I'm going to be walking, then so be it. So be it. It might mean that you need to walk for a little while and build up your aerobic capacity. You might just have to walk for a little while, and that's okay. We're in this for the long run, mind the pun. We're in this for the long haul. We're not here to get this over quickly. We're here for a lifestyle change. Well, that's certainly what I wanted to start running for, is I wanted this to be a part of my life long term. I realized it was just like, I'm not getting sponsored by anybody. I'm not, going to the Olympics next year. I'm not, being paid to do this. It doesn't matter. If it takes me years to get to a certain distance in a certain shape, then who cares? It's literally no rush. Take your time to build your foundation properly. And if it means you've got to suck it up and walk for a little while, that's fine. But it actually means you'll enjoy it a little more too. Like, by flogging yourself every single time, like, of course I hated it. Of course, when I was so shattered all the time, of course I wasn't going to be keen to go back to it. Slow it down. It actually makes it a little bit more enjoyable. And then linking back to the first point that I made, that it's just, in time it will pass. You've just got to be persistent and just push through those first couple of weeks of starting your running journey, even if that means it's actually fast walking to start with. Push through those first few weeks. It takes some discipline to stick to a routine and honor that routine and honor that promise for yourself. So I feel like that's 50% of what makes it really hard to start running as well, is maintaining a routine around running. But if you can push through within a few weeks or even a few months, it starts to feel easier. And when you can get to the point where you are just cruising along, like running slowly, but actually running for a decent amount of time, like running for 30 minutes, for example, it feels amazing. And once that feeling sinks in, once you start to get decent distances and it's easy and your heart rate's starting to go down and you're able to run a 5K and breathe through your nose the whole time, like you're not breathing hard the whole time, it's just feeling really cruisy and chill. You finish your run, you get home, and you're like, you can continue on with your day, you're not even tired. That's the best feeling. Like, once I started to feel like that, and that happened, it didn't take that long. It probably took me maybe 2 months to get to that point. Yeah, it took me 2 months. You've got to persist with it a bit. But I got to that point and I was like, oh, I get it. I get why people are obsessed about this now. Because, as I said before, I have built a whole personality around thinking that runners are crazy and that they must be just built different to me, because I don't feel that way when I run. And yet they say that it's fun. And honestly, I just can't relate to that. But once I had that experience of it actually starting to feel easy, I was like, okay, I get it. And then you get endorphins and then you really get it. So that would be my first little pointer there. Another thing that makes running amazing is it does really help you to humble yourself. So not only did I have to check my ego a bit in the initial phases to recognize I needed to walk a fair bit in the beginning of my journey, I got humbled again this year when I started to take my running a little more seriously, and I joined a running club, and got a running coach. Now, part of this running group, they are people who have been running for a really long time. Most of the members of the group that I've spoken to, I haven't got around to speak to everyone yet. It's quite a big group, but most of the people I've spoken to have been running for years. Even more so, have been running their whole lives. So they're people that have always identified with being an active person. Because of that, because they've been really experienced, because they are actually accomplished, excellent runners, they are all way faster than me. I'm the slowest in the group every single time. Fortunately, the way that the group's set up is it's in circuits. So we're just doing loops of the same circuit. So it's not as though I'm keep holding anyone up by me being so slow, but it is humbling being constantly overtaken, and just seeing how much slower I am in the rest of the group, and that can hurt sometimes. It can feel a bit sad, particularly on days where not every running day feels amazing either. Some days just feel a bit crappy. Sometimes your body's just not really up for it. Your mood's not great. You're fatigued. You didn't sleep very well. You're not as hydrated. There could be 100 factors that can influence the way we feel when we run on any given day. Like literally the very next day, I can feel great, even though the day before I felt terrible. And particularly on those days where I'm not feeling particularly good and then I'm feeling really slow compared to everybody else, it can feel really hard. It can sort of knock you around a little bit. And a little mindset shift that I had to give myself the other day, I had to give myself a little talking to on the way home from training the other day. And I said, all these people are better than you. What better environment do you have to grow? I'm surrounded by people who are much better than me. Who better to push me to push harder and go further and do better? If I was surrounded by people who were just walking behind me the whole time, yeah, my ego would get a nice little kick along, but I'm not going to get any inspiration to be able to push myself harder and recognize what I was actually capable of, right? So it's actually an amazing opportunity to be surrounded by people more accomplished than you, because they can teach you so much and they offer free advice all the time. It's actually a really great environment to be a part of. And certainly starting to hire a coach and taking my training more seriously was a really good move as well. It's pretty affordable still, and it's really helped shift the game a bit in terms of having like a bit of a stress-free way of being able to start to structure my training. But yeah, these people are much more accomplished than me. And once I started to park my ego a bit with that, I realized that was actually a really great opportunity. That comes into play with entering races as well. So I've since starting my running journey properly 2 years ago, I've entered two 10K races. I've also entered two 12-kilometer trail races. I started trail running this year and I loved it. I love trail running so much. And that's when I realized that's the kind of runner that I want to be. I want to be a trail runner. And that's why I hired my coach actually, because he's got a trail running speciality. And so that's what really got me into wanting to take my running more seriously. Because although I loved the trail running, the second trail run that I did this year, I came dead last. And yep, humbled again. And that's why I decided to take the running more seriously, because I knew that if I could get fitter, if I could get stronger, if I could get better structure in my program and train smarter, that I would have a better experience the next time I run. Not to win or anything, but just to enjoy it more, just to not feel so completely wrecked after it, I still got through it and I'm really proud of myself for doing it. And I didn't hit the cutoff or anything like that. I made the time and stuff, but I know I could, if I just invest a little bit and again, be smarter in my training, that I might have a better time next time. So we'll see how we go with that. But yeah, it sucks being slow. It sucks being last. It sucks being the slowest one in the group sometimes. But yeah, just remember that you're running laps around your past self who was sitting on the couch. I think that's the thing to always reflect on too. My past self would not be able to believe what I can do now. And I do need to keep remembering that. The last thing that kind of played with my head a little bit as someone who started running only in my 30s is the fact that I don't look like the typical runner, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. So, what's shown on social media, what's certainly the body type in the running group that I'm a part of, runners that you see run past you, the majority of runners I see don't look like me. And that can play with my head a little bit too. So most of the runners that I see are long and lean. They're tall and they're lean and they just, you know what I mean? They look like a runner, right? They're athletic, they're strong, long and lean, fit looking people. And although one might argue I can look like a fit person too, I'm exactly the opposite of what I would stereotype as a runner. I am 5 foot tall and thick, and bless my thick thighs, bless them. I'm finally in a place where I'm feeling really great about my body. I'm in a really good place with my body. So when I say that, that's no critique of my body whatsoever. I genuinely love my shape. I love the way my body is. But I think when I've been signing up for these races and been rocking up to these races and seeing other people running, it's still like initially it was just still a bit odd. It was like, I don't look like any of these people. Should I be here? Is there something I'm missing here? Am I at a disadvantage here because I am built quite differently to the people around me? And it did make me question a little bit. I guess after a while, I don't really have any advice about that, but it's just like eventually you just stop caring. I did. I just didn't care anymore. I was like, oh well. And I go back to my earlier point of I'm not looking for sponsorship. I'm not looking to break world records. I'm not looking to win world-class events. I'm not going to be the next Courtney Dauwalter. It's fine. So who cares? Who cares if I'm not built the same? Who cares if the way that I'm built potentially puts me at a disadvantage? I don't have a thigh gap. That's fine. I know the kind of shorts I can wear. I can't wear the little tiny shorts that people wear. They look really cool, but that will not work for me. So it is what it is. Maybe I'm not stereotypically built for the sport, but I can still do it, and I'm really enjoying it. So who gives a damn? So that's what I would say is that if you also worry about that, you worry that you don't fit that stereotypical mold of the physique that you're supposed to have, the age range you're supposed to be, the look of a runner, who cares? Like, you just enjoy it. The other thing is, the more of us that do it, of all different shapes and sizes, the more that people will see that other body types do these sports. So I think that's the other reason why I think it's really important to share my journey, and encourage others to do the same. Is that the more of us, different body types, different fitness levels that are in this space, the more that we normalize this is a sport for everyone. And the amazing thing about it is too, when you get into the running community, like actually talking to runners in my local group, talking to runners at the local events and things like that, the running community welcomes that. Like, fellow runners, they are happy people. They are ambitious, joy-filled people. They've got endorphins cranking. Like, they are a welcoming, kind community. Every now and then you're going to get someone who is not amazing, but that's just human beings, right? It's such a small percentage, but every runner I've spoken to so far has only been encouraging, and either is indifferent about me being a runner or is actually really encouraging of me being a runner. When I've come last in some of my groups, you know what happens? Like literally in my running group a couple of weeks ago, I was sort of like slightly insecure and was just sort of laughing to myself of like, I'm the last one to finish the lap sort of thing. And he said, well, how cool for you. We're already here to cheer you on in the end. You've got more people ahead of you that can cheer you when you get home. I was like, that's such a lovely reframe. So it's just like the running community I've found has been really welcoming and supportive. And the more of us that are in that space that are just in there for genuine reasons, the more that, yeah, other people can have this amazing experience. So, obviously do all the right things. Make sure you take good care of yourself. Make sure you get professional support and advice. If you are brand new to the sport, we do want to make sure that you're not getting injured. So do get advice where you can. Talk to your doctor if you need to. Take it slow. Take really good care of your body. But when you can do all of those things, I would really strongly encourage you to think about doing it, even if it's just with walking, because that's exactly what I did. I did that for months and it was fine. And it's given me so much. Running has given me so much so far. And it's gotten me to the point where 5 years ago, I could barely run for a minute. Like, honestly, could barely run for a minute. And I hated it to the point where this week I am in a half marathon race. So, in the space of just a couple of years, and I'd never even intended to come this far. I just started it, started to like the fact that I could see improvements and just kept going. And now I'm ready for a half marathon. So I will update you. I will let you know how I go with all of that. Welcome to the running community. If you're new to the running community, if you're already in the running community, welcome. I'm going to welcome you. Let's go Team Slow Runners Club. You're welcome here, and I'd love for you to add in the comments where you're up to in your running journey. Right, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.